So we're going back into building your DM for hire service. This is part 2. I'm doing 3 total parts. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Why don't we? Right. So here we go. Build your service. So if you remember, when we talk about build your service, this is something that we can imagine as a blueprint where we are pre-planning how we're going to ensure that our players come back for additional sessions with us. And let me just make sure one other thing here. I want to make sure that I have, here we go. Put my image up there in the top right so you can see when I'm talking. There we go. Yeah, so we want to do a few things to make sure that we have a baseline. And we talked about this last week. Have a baseline of how we want to build everything, so that now we have a solid foundation of where we're starting our DM for hire business. Now, I said before, this is going to be a first pass where we are, there's a draft, kind of like a draft. This is like our first draft. We're just going to jump in and just try to start building some things. So let's review basically what we talked about last week. Obviously, the end goal here is to get ideal clients to come through, and we do that by presenting an irresistible offer, right? And we want to do that without compromising our values and what we care about. So if you remember from last week, we also talked about the struggles. So there's 3 main struggles that I talked about. And the first one was, what elements are we supposed to be including? And if you remember last week, that was part 1 of this series, where we're building all the elements of our DM for hire service. And that being very important because it's stuff that we care about. And when we are doing something that we care about and we're having fun with it, our players at the table are going to see that, and they're going to enjoy themselves a whole lot more as well. Second thing was no consistent experience. So that's the second struggle that we talk about when we want to build a service here. So that's the one we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be covering that struggle. The last struggle was lack of confidence on what to charge. So we'll go over that on the next video, part 3, next week. All right. So if you remember our goals for creating a DM for hire service, we're going to go from being unsure about our elements of the offer, inconsistent experience for both ourselves and for our players. And we're going to cover that today. And then the lack of confidence of what to charge, that we'll cover that tomorrow as well. And then, or not tomorrow, next week, sorry. The elements that we're going to go from all that to bringing out our best of what we can possibly have in a game for our players. And then we want them to give us really raving reviews and come back for more. That's the idea. At least any kind of business, you want to have repeat customers, right? And then lastly, we'll talk about we're going to make sure that we get confidence around what we're going to charge. So let's jump in. I'm going to do another little camera switch here just so it's easier to see me. If you remember from last week, we have a build your service action list here. Let me switch to this view. Here we go. So we have a build your service action list. And last week, as you can see, it's grayed out right now. But last week we talked about the how to determine what you want to add, what elements you want to put into your offer. And if you remember, we talked about several categories. There was a service category. What kind of services can we give to our ideal players? What kind of software are we going to use? There's a lot of things behind that, a lot of options and choices we want to make. What kind of resources can we offer? That kind of thing, just as a recap. So we talked about last week, right? So today, let's talk about creating working procedures. All right. So when we're building a DM for hire service, when you're building your own, I want you to make sure that you create the most amazing, experience that anyone has ever seen when they come to your table, right? That's the ideal. That's what you want to try to shoot for. Now, as a DM for hire, you want to do everything in your power to convey a level of professionalism, right? Because that's what this is all about. You want to, if you do that, your paying players will notice that, and then they're going to tell all their friends, and then they're going to become a regular at your game table. That's what you want. That should be your goal, at least, right? So in order to do that and keep everything free from chaos, chaos, clutter, everything you have to think about, I want you to start thinking about how to assemble a series of standard working procedures. And what this is going to do is it's going to generate quality and consistency with every session. and it's going to help you feel like you're in control and you don't have this chaos going on and all this overwhelm and disorganization all over the place, right? And if you treat this opportunity like a real business, then that's what it becomes. It becomes a real business that you can be proud of. So, what is a working procedure? So, let me start by giving an example of what a working procedure is. So, I used to own a game shop. Uh, I built it about 5 years ago. And then, I ended up losing it to COVID. That's a whole different story. So I had to close the store for good. But when I was at that game shop and I was running that game shop, I started a working procedure with my staff. Okay. And not just one working procedures around every aspect of the business. So, I don't just mean we thought about it and then we agreed upon what working procedures should be. What we actually did was we created actual documents. So we took the time, and it sounds like a tedious task or whatnot, but you're only doing it once. So we took the time to actually write out the documents, and we detailed step-by-step instructions for each of the areas of the business. And those could be it could be a bullet point list, it could be a narrative format, however is easiest to convey what needs to be done for each task. So whether it was handling customer service at the register, or if it was like setting up tables for a magic tournament, or how to handle incoming inventory, we had working procedures for all of these things. So the point here is that we made sure to cover 95% of all possible tasks that could be handled on a day-to-day basis. So you got to kind of think to yourself, what are some things that I'm going to have to be doing in this business on a regular basis? And if I write a document around that, it will be consistent every time. That's the idea. So for your DM for hire service, you want to create working procedures as a document that, we said before, maybe we create it as a narrative format or some kind of step-by-step on how we're going to do certain things. So first, let's say that a working procedure is going to be a living document, which means it's definitely going to change over time, because you're going to tweak it and perfect it. And over time, once you get that process locked in, then it will be more of a semi-permanent type thing. It might change, every month instead of every week, or maybe it ends up only being once a year that you make some changes to it. But the best way to create and maintain one of these working procedure documents is to use Google Docs, a free tool, right? Everybody has access to this. And then you just create a document in the cloud up on Google Docs. And what's cool about that is now you can access it from any device. So if you're somewhere where you don't have a laptop, or maybe you just have your phone, you can open it up on your phone and review it and or edit it or whatever else you need to do. But you will always have the latest version of that, right? And so for my game shop, I created a working procedure so as an example, for when a customer purchases a ticket to one of our D&D or Magic the Gathering events, right? I had another working procedure for when new inventory was delivered, and one for how to close down the store at the end of the night. So what are some areas that you can think of that need a working procedure around running paid D&D sessions? So that's kind of important, right? Here are a few ideas that I can think of. And I'm sure that if you were to think about how you want to run things, you'll come up with a whole bunch of different ones. Can you create a working procedure around how to get the word out about your paid sessions? In other words, marketing. What is your plan around marketing? Do you have a certain procedure that you want to do around that? Is it like every Monday you're going to go do some posting, and what does that post format look like? Right. And marketing is a whole different topic. We'll go over that in another time, but you always want to have a certain format for marketing. It's going to have a certain structure to it. So you'll probably want to lay that out in a working procedure. What about steps you need to take when you're onboarding new players? They can certainly use some handouts from you, some sheets that maybe go over some ground rules or expectations that they can see. Maybe you just email them something. Maybe there's a email structure that you send to all your new people, something like that, or some kind of text that you want to send them to keep them up to date on things. So these are procedures, right? What about what would you do if you had some steps for preparing a session? So every new paid session that you're going to do you have a procedure or a structure, or some kind of step-by-step that you would want to make sure that you're hitting all these different points, right? What about the things you need in order to build a new adventure? What if you're creating a new adventure and maybe it's because your service has a group who wants a specific type of adventure, so you have to create it from scratch. Do you have a working procedure around that? What about providing character creation sessions and all the things that need to be covered with one of those sessions when you're helping somebody create a character? And if that's a new person, then maybe it's got a different working procedure than somebody who already knows what they're doing, and you're just doing an audit of their character sheet. What can't be missed and what can't. So the idea is here, what are some things that could be missed or forgotten? That's what you want to make sure you're writing down, because in the moment when you're trying to think of everything and trying to remember it, instead of having it written down, you're going to end up forgetting things, or you'll be, darn, I wish I remembered XYZ, right? So as you can see, there are plenty of areas that you can build out procedures. So you will be able to prevent overwhelm and feel secure knowing you're organized, right? Now, those are just some examples I gave. You can come up with a whole bunch more, I'm sure. Now, imagine here real quick, the reason why you'd want to do this. Imagine having a way to remind yourself the best way to do something, right? So most folks don't write anything down, and they'll need to spend mental energy just simply wading through the chaos and the clutter in their mind just to try to get to the details and working on not forgetting certain things, right? But it's kind of like the analogy, not an analogy. It's here's an example, like a real world example. Have you ever noticed that when you don't write down a to-do list and you just try to keep it in your head, it kind of feels like a lot of weight, right? It feels like there's this big list and, it's filled with so many things, and you're worried about, all the things you got to get done, but you're worried about what things you might forget. So I remember, I remember at one time when I was just being too lazy to write down my to-do list, I would be like, okay, what are the top 3 things? And I would kind of like come up with ways to help me remember what are the top 3 things, because there's only 3 things I got to remember to do today. And then I kind of try to rack my brain to make sure I remember them, right? So folks usually do that, right? But if you take a few short minutes to write down a to-do list instead of trying to keep it in your head, all of a sudden it doesn't seem so daunting anymore, right? You look at the list and you're like, wow, it wasn't actually as big as I was making it out to be in my head. And that's because as humans, it's human nature. We tend to like loop through scenarios in our head, including like a list, right? We'll loop through them and it ends up feeling like this big infinite circle that never ends. But when you write it down, it's a finite thing from beginning to end, right? And that's, it ends up feeling in your head much bigger than it really is. But then when you have something that you've written down and it's in an organized way, it's freeing in a way. You feel so much more confident about moving forward with things, and then you're not so flustered all the time, right? So this is what a working procedure is going to do for you. Now, I want you to remember, don't underestimate the power that a working procedure can bring to you. It will get rid of so much chaos. It will help with organization. It will present you as a professional. There's just so many reasons why you'd want to do it. So let's review again. Okay, so creating a working procedure, right? So this is just one action that we're going to take here in our build your service section, right? So building your service is just one step in a clear 9-step roadmap. And I'll just review that again with you real quick here. I'll put it up on the screen. Where is it? There we go. And I think I need to change the format of my, let's go back over to here. Yep. Change it back to this. There we go. So you can see that. So it's just one step in a clear 9-step roadmap. This is step number 6. We've got these 3 actions that we're talking about, building the elements of your offer, the thing we just talked about today, which is working procedures. And then next week, I'm going to go over the 3rd action, which is part of this 6th step in the 9-step roadmap. That will be, what are we talking about? What was it again? The 3rd thing was, oh geez, I totally forgot it. That's why I have it on a slide deck. And that's, you just unload everything. You don't have to remember it all. Let's go back to it so we can take a look real quick. The 3rd thing we're going to cover next week is going to be building our offer. So that's actually what are the pieces of the offer that we're going to put in a game listing, in a paid game listing, so that players know what to expect, right? That's the idea, at least. So that being said, before I sign off, once again, I want to reiterate that we have an upcoming 5-day workshop in about a month or so. And if that's something that you're interested in, go ahead and hit the link up there in the description of this video. It'll take you to a page where you will be able to grab our free download for a 3-step DM adventure pack, which is going to be a bunch of worksheets that you'll be able to use. And what else do I have to say about that? Let's see, back to this view really quick. Yeah, so when you go to this download place, you scroll to the bottom, there'll be a yellow section where you can sign up to be notified when the challenge is open for registration.